The West Shore ballroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers as I walked through the entrance of my mother's 60th birthday party. I'd chosen a simple black dress and my usual modest jewelry, nothing that would draw attention. My sister Victoria spotted me immediately, her perfectly manicured hand gripping her champagne flute a little tighter. "Oh, you actually came," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the reception area. She was wearing a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "I told Mom you might not be able to afford the Uber here." I smiled and kept walking. The venue looked perfect, exactly as I'd specified when I'd reviewed the final plans 3 weeks ago. The ice sculptures were positioned correctly, the lighting hit every table at the right angle, and the appetizer stations were strategically placed for optimal flow. None of them knew I'd spent hours perfecting every detail. "Sarah." My mother's voice rang out from the center of the ballroom. Elena Martinez, 60 years old today, stood surrounded by her bridge club friends and distant relatives. She wore the forced smile she always gave me, the one that said she'd rather I hadn't shown up. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd be able to take time off from whatever it is you do these days." "I wouldn't miss it, Mom," I said, kissing her cheek. "Happy birthday." "Did you bring a gift?" my cousin Isabella whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. "Or are you doing that thing where you make something homemade again?" Last year I'd given my mother a framed photograph I'd taken myself. Victoria had given her a cruise to Greece. The comparisons had been inevitable. "I brought something," I said vaguely. Victoria appeared at my elbow, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. "Let me guess, a card? Maybe a gift certificate to somewhere affordable." She laughed and several nearby relatives joined in. "It's okay to admit you're struggling, Sarah. We've all been there. Well, most of us." I let her words wash over me. My younger sister had always been the golden child. MBA from Stanford, director position at a Fortune 500 company by 28, married to a successful attorney. Meanwhile, I was the family disappointment. The one who dropped out of business school, who lived in a tiny apartment in the less fashionable part of town, who drove a 10-year-old sedan and bought clothes from outlet stores. What they didn't know was that every choice was deliberate. "The food looks incredible," my Aunt Carmen said, eyeing the past hors d'oeuvres. "Elena, you really outdid yourself with this venue." My mother preened. "Only the best. Victoria helped me find this place. She has connections everywhere." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Victoria had found this place because I'd anonymously sent my mother a list of 3 venues 6 months ago, knowing she'd pick this one. It was, after all, the flagship property of Martinez Events and Hospitality, the company I'd built from nothing over the past 8 years. "The catering must have cost a fortune," Isabella's husband commented. "These crab cakes alone." "Let's not discuss money," my mother said quickly, though she looked pleased. "It's a milestone birthday. I deserve to celebrate properly." "Unlike some people's budgets," Victoria murmured, looking pointedly at me. "Sarah, how much did your apartment cost again?" "Like $1,200 a month." "Something like that," I said. The truth was I paid $800 for a studio in a neighborhood most of my family wouldn't visit, but I also owned a penthouse in the Pearl District that I'd never told them about. It was easier this way. Fewer questions. The party continued around me. I watched the servers move through the crowd with practiced efficiency. My staff, though they'd been instructed never to acknowledge me at family events. I recognized most of them. Carlos, who'd been with me for 5 years. Jennifer, who was working her way through culinary school. Michael, my operations manager, who was currently ensuring the kitchen ran smoothly. "I heard you're still doing freelance work?" my uncle Roberto asked, his tone pitying. "That must be difficult. No stability, no benefits." "I manage," I said. "You should talk to Victoria," my mother suggested, waving my sister over. "She might know of some entry-level positions at her company. Something with a steady paycheck." Victoria's smile was sharp. "I'd be happy to help, Sarah. I know you've been struggling to find your footing. Some people just aren't cut out for entrepreneurship." She said the last word with a slight sneer, as if my freelance writing and consulting work was cute but ultimately childish. If only she knew that my freelance work was a cover story. That Martinez Events and Hospitality employed over 300 people across 4 cities. That we'd done events for 3 governors, 2 senators, and more celebrities than I could count. That the struggling sister she pitied had a personal net worth that would make her corporate salary look like pocket change. That's very generous, I said mildly. The lights dimmed as dinner service began. I'd planned the timing perfectly. Sunset would hit just as the main course was served, creating the golden hour effect that made every Instagram photo magical. My mother's friends were already pulling out their phones. I watched as the first course emerged from the kitchen. Seared scallops with citrus foam and microgreens. My executive chef Andre's signature dish. The room filled with appreciative murmurs. "This is Michelin star quality," someone said. "I told you I spared no expense," my mother replied, glowing. Victoria leaned toward me. "You know, Mom almost didn't invite you. She thought you might feel uncomfortable around all this success." He gestured at the room. "Everyone here has accomplished something. Dad's retired from his practice, Uncle Roberto just sold his business, Isabella's husband made partner. And what have I done? I finished for her. Besides exist as the family charity case." "I wouldn't put it that harshly," Victoria said, though her eyes said otherwise. "But let's be honest, Sarah. You're 30 years old. Still renting, still doing odd jobs, still single. At some point you have to wonder if you made the wrong choices." The main course arrived. Filet mignon with truffle butter, accompanied by roasted vegetables and potato gratin. I'd spent 2 hours tasting options with Andre to get this menu perfect. Every dish had been selected to match my mother's preferences while impressing her guests. "The presentation is stunning," Aunt Carmen said. "Elena, who did you use for catering?" "Some company Victoria recommended," my mother said. "Very exclusive, supposedly. They handle celebrity events." I took a bite of my steak to hide my expression. Victoria had recommended my company because I'd made sure we were the only catering service available for this date. Every other high-end caterer in the city had mysteriously been booked solid. "Martinez Events and Hospitality," Victoria said proudly, as if she'd personally discovered us. "They're the best in the city. I had to pull strings to get them for Mom's party." "How much did this cost?" Isabella asked. "Just ballpark." "Isabella." My mother looked scandalized but pleased. "That's not appropriate. I'm just saying this level of service, the venue, the catering, the flowers, the entertainment, it's got to be 6 figures. "Not quite that much," Victoria said, though she looked smug. "But it is significant. Good thing some of us are in a position to contribute." She glanced at me. "Right, Sarah? I'm sure you would have helped if you could." I sipped my wine. A 2015 Bordeaux I'd personally selected from my company's private collection. "I'm sure Mom appreciates everything you did, Victoria." "Well, someone had to step up," Victoria said. "Someone had to make sure Mom's milestone birthday was special." The dinner progressed through multiple courses. I noticed Michael checking in with the servers, ensuring every detail was perfect. The timing was flawless, the service impeccable. Every element I'd spent months planning was executing exactly as designed. As dessert was being cleared, a chocolate soufflé with gold leaf that had the entire room photographing it, I saw Marcus, my catering director, approaching the table. He caught my eye briefly and I gave him the slightest nod. "Excuse me," Marcus said, stopping beside my chair. "Ms. Martinez?" The table fell silent. Victoria looked confused. "I'm Victoria Martinez," she said. "Actually, I need to speak with Sarah Martinez," Marcus said, his voice professional. "About tonight's event." "Sarah." My mother looked bewildered. Why would the caterer need to speak with Sarah? Marcus pulled out his tablet, his expression neutral. "Ms. Martinez, your company's invoice for tonight's event is $85,000. I wanted to confirm the final headcount and ensure everything met your specifications." The silence that fell over the table was deafening. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, her voice thin. "Sarah's company?" "Martinez Events and Hospitality," Marcus said, pulling up the contract on his screen. "Miss Sarah Martinez, owner and CEO. We've been planning tonight's event for 6 months." My mother's champagne flute hung frozen halfway to her lips. That's not possible. Sarah does freelance writing." "Among other things," I said quietly. "Marcus, everything has been perfect. Please give my compliments to Andre and the entire team." "Wait," Isabella said. "You own the catering company? The one Victoria was just bragging about?" And the venue, I added. The West Shore Ballroom is one of our properties. We have 4 locations across the city. Victoria's face had gone pale. That's not, you can't, she turned to our mother. Mom, did you know about this? My mother looked like she might faint. Sarah, what is he talking about? $85,000. That's the cost of tonight, I explained. The venue rental, catering, florals, entertainment, coordination services. It's actually a slight discount from our usual rate. Family rate, you could say. But my father spoke for the first time all evening. Sarah, how did you build a successful events company? I finished. The same way anyone builds a business, Dad. Hard work, smart decisions, and good timing. I started 8 years ago with a small catering contract. Grew from there. You said you were doing freelance work, my mother said, her voice shaking. You said you were struggling. I said I was managing, I corrected. You all assumed the rest. Victoria found her voice. This is insane. Why would you pretend to be broke? I wasn't pretending, I said. I live modestly because I choose to. I drive an old car because it's reliable. I live in a small apartment because I don't need much space. I never lied about any of it. But you let us think. Victoria's hands were shaking. I offered to help you get an entry-level job. I felt sorry for you. I know, I said softly. And I appreciated the concern even if it came with condescension. Aunt Carmen was scrolling on her phone. Oh my God. Sarah, your company did Governor Mitchell's inauguration ball. You catered the museum gala. You're all over the society pages. We try to stay behind the scenes, I said. Our clients' events are their moments, not ours. My mother set down her glass with a shaking hand. So tonight, everything tonight, you paid for it? Consider it my gift, I said. Happy 60th birthday, Mom. $85,000, Isabella breathed. That's not a gift, that's a fraction of what I spend on client events, I finished. Mom, you said you wanted a memorable celebration. I made sure you got one. Victoria's shock was morphing into anger. Why didn't you tell us? Why let us all think you were failing? Because you never asked what I was actually doing, I said, meeting her eyes. You asked if I was struggling, if I needed help, if I'd finally gotten a real job. You never asked if I was happy, if I was successful, if my life was working for me. That's not fair, Victoria started. Isn't it? I interrupted. Tonight, before you knew the truth, you told me I was an embarrassment. That I'd made wrong choices. That I wasn't accomplished enough to be around successful people. I gestured at the room. All while sitting in my venue eating food my staff prepared, celebrating an event I designed and paid for. My mother's eyes were filling with tears. Sarah, I had no idea. All these years I thought. You thought I was a disappointment, I finished gently. I know, Mom. That's why I wanted tonight to be perfect. To show you that I'm doing okay. More than okay. Why keep it secret though? My father asked, genuinely puzzled. Why not just tell us? Because I needed to know if you'd love me when you thought I had nothing, I said. Turns out you didn't. The words hung in the air. Around us, other guests were starting to notice the tension at our table, the whispered conversations spreading through the room. That's not true, my mother said, but her voice lacked conviction. Mom, when's the last time you called me just to talk? I asked. Not to ask if I needed money, not to hint about job opportunities, not to compare me to Victoria. When did you last call because you wanted to hear my voice? She opened her mouth, closed it, had no answer. I love this family, I said. But I'm tired of being your cautionary tale. The daughter who didn't live up to expectations. I stood, placing my napkin on the table. For what it's worth, I hope you enjoyed tonight. Every detail was chosen with you in mind. Sarah, wait, Victoria said, standing too. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry. For all of it. For assuming. For being cruel. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. Saw past the designer clothes and perfect makeup to the genuine regret in her eyes. I spent 8 years building something I'm proud of, I said. But I spent those same years watching my family pity me. Do you know how that feels? No, Victoria whispered. I don't. Tonight isn't about revenge, I said, my voice softening. It's about truth. I wanted Mom to have a beautiful birthday. But I also wanted you all to see that success looks different for everyone. My apartment might be small, but I own a business that employs 300 people. My car might be old, but my company's revenue last year was $47 million. Aunt Carmen actually gasped at that number. I didn't need your pity or your help, I continued. I needed your respect. Your belief that maybe, just maybe, I knew what I was doing with my life. My mother stood, reaching for my hand. You're right. We judged you unfairly. I judged you unfairly. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm so sorry, Mija. I'm so proud of what you've built, and I'm ashamed it took this to make me see it. The sincerity in her voice cracked something in my chest. Mom. No, let me finish, she said. You gave me the most beautiful party I could have imagined. You did it while letting us believe you couldn't afford a proper gift. And you did it because you love me despite how I've treated you. He squeezed my hand. That's grace I don't deserve. You're my mother, I said simply. I want you to be happy. I want you to be happy too, she said. And clearly you are. You've built something incredible. She looked around the ballroom. All of this, you created this? With a lot of help, I said. I have an amazing team. Stay, my mother said. Please. Let me celebrate you, not just my birthday. I hesitated, then nodded. As I sat back down, Victoria touched my arm. Can we start over? She asked quietly. I'd really like to know about your business. The real story, not the version I assumed. I'd like that, I said. Marcus reappeared with champagne. A toast for the birthday girl? He suggested, his eyes twinkling. He'd been with me since the beginning, had watched me build this company from nothing. He knew what tonight meant. My father stood, raising his glass. To Elena, who raised two exceptional daughters. Even if it took me too long to see it. To Mom, Victoria said, her voice thick. And to Sarah, who just taught us all a lesson in humility. To family, I said. And second chances. We drank, and for the first time in years I felt like I was actually part of the celebration instead of just attending it. As the party continued around us, my mother pulled me aside. Tell me everything, she said. How did you do it? How did you build all this? So I did. I told her about the first small wedding I'd catered from my apartment kitchen. About the loan I'd taken out, the risks I'd calculated, the sleepless nights. About landing my first major client, then another. About opening my first venue, training my staff, building a reputation for excellence. Why didn't you tell us? She asked again. We could have celebrated with you. Because I needed to prove it to myself first, I admitted. That I could do it without the family name, without connections, without help. I needed to know I'd earned it. And have you, she asked, proven it to yourself? I looked around the ballroom, at the business I'd built, the team I'd trained, the event I'd orchestrated. At my family finally seeing me for who I actually was. Yeah, I said. I think I have. My mother hugged me tight. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Mija. You've always been stronger than any of us realized. As the evening wound down, guests thanking me as they left, now understanding who had actually made the magic happen, I felt Victoria approach. I meant what I said, she told me. About starting over. I've been awful to you and I'm ashamed of it. You were working with incomplete information, I said diplomatically. I was working with my own insecurity, she corrected. Always needing to be the successful one, the important one. I didn't leave room for you to shine too. There's room for both of us, I said. Your achievements are real, Victoria. Mine don't diminish yours. She smiled, genuine warmth in it for the first time in years. Maybe we could have lunch? Real lunch where we actually talk. I'd like that. As I drove home that night in my old sedan, past the penthouse I owned but didn't live in, toward the modest apartment that was enough for me, I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret was out. The hiding was over. Tomorrow I had 3 client meetings and a site inspection for a senator's retirement party. But tonight I'd given my mother a perfect 60th birthday. And I'd given myself something too, the freedom to stop hiding who I'd become.